So, ladies and gentlemen, fanboys and girls, nerds, weebs, and otaku, welcome back and welcome home.
Hello there, Applebites. This is your Applebite Written Writ Ralph talking to you straight from our show here, the Written Writ show, where you and I and you get creative, have fun, and geek out. And right off the bat, Shadow Rabbit is going, yo, what's good, guys? Gotta love the rabbit. Folks, we have a special show tonight. We will be talking some Cradle Con, and we'll be talking some Abracadabra. And I like saying that word, so you might hear it a lot. Oh man, I gotta say, I've been looking forward to having Seamus on for a while, and Rob is always a good time to have. I see Rob is having issue. He was fine before. No sound at all? How about you, Seamus? You good?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So what we'll do while Rob works on that is we will start with you, Seamus. Tell the people all the good stuff. Tell them who you are. Give them the spiel. Go for it.
The spiel. All right. Seamus Keen. I work at the Cradle Aviation Museum in Garden City, New York, and I'm the director of special events, which allows me to put on great shows like Cradle Con and allows me to assist in helping with other great expo type shows like Tabletop Gaming Expo, which is happening this weekend at the Cradle.
Exactly.
And the Retro Video Game Expo, which happens every August at the Cradle.
I gotta say, this is like these three cons, even they have something in common, but at the same time they don't. How did it come to be that you have these three specific cons?
Cradle Con came out of basically we kind of just had a love for everything comics and everything related to comics and that entire culture. And Retro Video Game Expo came out of my relationship with Joel Albino, who runs that convention. He came to me because I had created an exhibit about 10 years ago on that we call the Arcade Age exhibit. So it was an exhibit that tells the history of arcade games, video arcade games specifically, in America from 1978 till about the early 90s when they really kind of crashed out.
Right.
And he just said we had something very much in common, and he wanted to bring the expo to the Cradle, and I said, yeah, let's do it. Tabletop also comes out of Joel, which kind of was a part of the Retro Video Game Expo for a couple of years, and then it got big enough that they wanted to split it out, outside and create.
I didn't know that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was together Long Island Retro for a while, and then it became its own Long Island Tabletop Gaming Expo, and Joel runs that with two other people named Jesse Harchuk and Courtney Triachieri, I believe. I forget her last name, but Courtney. Right. So they're the content of that particular expo that's happening this weekend.
Dude, That's just amazing. You know, especially I love Cradle Con, and I love all the other cons that happen at the Cradle of Aviation, because it's just such a great mix. You know, you're in the museum, the Cradle of Aviation, and at the same time you got a convention going.
Yeah.
And that's just, you know, amazing.
And I think just all three of those, you know, expo style, convention style events, you know, being like medium scale that they are,
Hmm.
not large scale. You know, we're not trying to be, at least with CradleCon, I'm not trying to really compete or be large scale with anything.
Right.
But all three of those conventions are all part of, I guess, what's been dubbed in popular culture now as, you know, geek culture. You
Right.
know, it was all.
Whew.
Oh no.
Now it's Seamus's turn.
No. We're
Right in the
taking
middle of
turns.
explaining. Well, you're back, Rob. I can hear you now.
I'm back, Rob Longo, 2121 Productions and Abracadabra Media.
There he goes. Seamus is back.
I'm back.
Can we hear you?
Yeah.
There you go. You were explaining?
I was just explaining like all three of those expos, all three of those things are all part of, you know, what people I guess consider, you know, quote unquote geek culture. Even though they are clearly divided, you know, there's clearly separate groups or separate
Geeks.
styles or types of folks
Uh-huh.
that attend these subculture events. They are all related somehow. They, you know, you do see the common, you know, the common denominator being geek culture or comics or that type of comic book culture is across all of those things, whether
You're completely
tabletop gaming
correct.
or video gaming or obviously just, you know, Comic Cons.
You're completely correct, because you know, you in a regular con you have all three elements. You know, and you know, it's great that each one gets their own chance to shine. You know, because sometimes you kind of get lost in the other convention.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you know, I know there's more of them now, but the tabletop gaming expo, that alone, you know, you don't see too much of. There's more of them now, but it was like for a while there you didn't see that many of these.
Yeah, and I think that also has a lot to do with the fact that that culture has grown, you know, since the 70s. I was geeking out over a book recently. I'm still reading it over the history of basically Dungeons and Dragons. You know, how that company, how TSR came to be,
Yeah,
and how it started in this guy's basement. Just what a fascinating history
yeah,
that company went through. But, you know, starting in the 70s, but how it's lasted all the way till now. And, you know, the people who are hardcore tabletop gaming people or role playing people, it was has always been, I feel like a very, not a hush hush thing, but you did it at the store, you know, you did it at a friend's house or was that. So to the fact that it has built up so much appreciation for it in general popular culture is now when you see it making its move to becoming more streamlined or mainstream culture, which is why I think you see these conventions popping up and these tabletop conventions popping up, and I think the whole card gaming thing, which skipped me, you know, the whole card gaming thing skipped me, so I'm a little bit too old for Pokemon, but I think all of that card gaming thing really gave it this second boost life
yeah.
that now everybody's kind of getting into it.
I completely agree. You know, I think that that's one of the things that helped all this stuff come back, is that this boom, because card gaming's been around for a while, you know, especially Magic the Gathering, but
Yeah.
I feel like recently you've gotten this bigger boom on card gaming.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned Magic the Gathering because we did like a little mini thing, a little tournament a few years ago, whatever. And I wasn't, you know, I was in, you know, the culture, so to speak, but I was mainly into video gaming and comics. And that's
Right.
my main part of the culture, is what I really grew up with and appreciate and love and have an affinity for. But we did a tournament, like a Magic the Gathering tournament years ago, whatever, at the Cradle. And I couldn't believe the amount of people that came out to that just to play this game that I really didn't have I had no clue how popular it was. But then the investment that these people have for this game
Yeah.
is just the same type of, but then like it's the same type of investment I have with my video games or my comic
Yep.
book collection.
Mhm.
So it's just a different style and different type of collecting, but it's all part of that same subculture of, you know, if I have expendable income, I know what I want to spend it on. I know what I want to collect. You know, the collector's income type of thing. So yeah, it was fascinating. And then I was like, well, yeah, there's definitely something really here. You know, this is definitely a big part of the culture.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who spend a lot of money on Magic the
Yeah.
and I went the wrong route with it because I was like, okay, I started playing and I was like, okay, this isn't for me. But the cards are beautiful, and that just becomes another place to put too much of your money.
Yep. Yep.
Started buying cards. I wasn't playing. I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to do something here.
Yeah.
But as you guys can see, you know, I feel like one of the good things about all three of these cons is that the museum itself is a playable character in all this. You know, I feel like because of the museum itself, it kind of makes these cons epic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just there's something cool about either playing a video game or playing a board game or a card game, you know, underneath the F-14 Tomcat, you know, in Hangar 2 in our museum, or in our World War II gallery. There's just something amazing to be playing, you know, Oregon Trail on an old PC computer in front of our F-3F fighter from, you know, the golden age of aviation type of stuff. So, and I always lay out or try to lay out my events using the galleries as much as I possibly can, because I think that the museum itself, the museum floor itself, is just this wonderful, beautiful backdrop. So I appreciate it from a historical standpoint because I went to school for history, but I think the nerd and the geek in me loves it as this backdrop for video gaming and comic books and just all sorts of, and it's great for cosplay stuff as well. Like the
Dude, those
photography
pictures in there come out so epic.
The photos that people get in the museum with the cosplay groups that come in there and visit us and I've become part of this. You know, I try to create a bit of a family environment at Cradle Con. So all of our vendors know where to find us. I know where to find them. But the cosplay groups have become part of that family too. And the photographs that they get are out of this world. I mean, I've never, some of them I'm just like, how did you guys even pull that off? Like, that doesn't look like my museum, but I know it is my museum. But yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, Shadow Rabbit's on the side going, coolest museum around and run by the coolest people.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you.
He's also saying that.
You know, I love Shadow Rabbit.
Oh, Shadow Rabbit's amazing. Same as a kid, I rarely ever played, but the cards had such awesome artwork on it. I used to try to draw characters and monsters from it. I completely agree. That's why those cards just drew me right in. Rob, I know you're part of the geek culture. Did the cards ever get your attention?
Yeah, I was a very early Magic the Gathering player during beta, and I even did a newsletter called Evil Council that gave Magic the Gathering strategies. It's a fantastic game because, you know, created by a mathematician, you know, with a love for fantasy and math, which leads to great gameplay.
I completely agree. I know I was able to get into the math, the D&D of math, the math of D&D, but when it came to the math of the cards, I was like, I don't know. But you know, to each his own. Some people can do some things, some people can't do other things.
Yeah.
You know, that's the beauty of geek. Is just there's so much out there for you to dive into. You don't have to pick it all, or you can pick one thing.
Yeah.
I wish I could pick just one thing.
That's the difficult thing, is to be able to pick one thing.
Video games, yes. Magic the Gathering, yes. Dungeons and Dragons, yes.
Yeah.
Although, just say no to Pogs.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I try. I mean, you know, we've been running the tabletop convention now with Joel and Courtney and Jesse for a couple of years now. So I kind of like, you know, it crosses into what I'm into, but I'm just like, at this point in time, like, am I really going to get into another thing? You know, like, do I have to add another thing to my collecting or my geekdom or my fandom? And just sometimes you also find that the danger of it is like, you actually don't have the time for it. I would love to sit down and learn D&D. I would love it. I would love to do campaigns with a group of people, whatever. But it's also, you know, what do I have time for on top of arcade stuff, on top of comic book stuff, on top of just life stuff, you know, on top of my job and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I definitely wish there was more hours in the day.
And D&D has such an easy in with video games, because when I play D&D, when I do all that role playing stuff, I'm constantly picturing video games, you know, and to me, RPGs and role playing games, it just all melds together.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, if you look as far back as really like D&D's influence in video gaming goes back very, very early, you know, to Atari, basically. And then when you think of really, I guess, like the 16-bit era, like I always pick on something like Golden Axe, you know, like Sega, like the Sega arcade cabinet, Golden Axe. That's so Dungeons and Dragons. It's so role playing. It's
Elf needs food.
Yeah. So, yeah, you definitely see the influence of role playing games on a lot of different things in the subcultures. Yeah.
Love it, and that's why I think we love it you guys so much, is because, you know, we're a geek kind of place here. You know, we love all geek stuff. We don't try to like narrow it down. We just like enjoying it all, and we're constantly being told that we need to pick a road, pick a poison, and I'm like, no, I want to enjoy it all. As much as I can, as much as I'll be allowed.
Agreed.
And that's exactly what we should do. I love the fact that, you know, we're having a lot of places like the museum and libraries which are getting into these things now, and I feel like it's a good way to also keep you guys alive as well, because, you know, I know that you guys sometimes have issues, not you personally, but in museums and libraries sometimes have issues with getting people in them.
Yeah. And you also have issues with, as far as like nonprofits goes, and especially museums and especially libraries too, is that funding is tough.
Yeah.
Funding has always been tough for museums, but a mid-level, mid-tier regional museum, which is what the Cradle Aviation is, it's very hard for us to get the funding. So when we started coming up with this idea of like doing these types of expos, we found they're basically kind of mini fundraisers for us. So they help us throughout the entire course of the year. And the bonus is that, you know, with somebody like me overseeing it from the museum end of things, or somebody like me running Cradle Con from the museum end of things, is that me and all the guys and the women who help me put it on and are my backbone of doing that show, they all love this culture. They're all part of it. They're all collectors themselves. They're all hardcore into video gaming. They're all hardcore into comic book collecting. They're all hardcore comic readers, collectors of whatever, statues, pop vinyls, action figures. They're all into it. So that's what makes it fun for all of us. So, you know, I do it because I love it. You know, I also do it because, like I said, it's a great little fundraiser for the museum and it helps the museum out tremendously. But I think the added bonus is because I love doing these specific things. I love this part about my job is what I love the most about my job, that it allows me the creativity to do these things, you know?
And you guys get really creative, because I know, because I have friends that live nearby in the museum, and you guys are constantly putting things in there. You were just talking about cosplay. You've started to do these bigger cosplay events in the museum itself, and that aren't attached to any of the cons. And I just finished seeing this whole photo shoot that happened at the museum, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, and that's a guy I work with. I'm working with him, Rod Leonhard. He's in our marketing department at the museum, and he's I believe he's at Mixed Light Photo.
Yeah.
And he started getting into just cosplay photography, and he's kind of just befriended all these folks that are out there doing this, and he's kind of gotten into this subculture of it, and he just decided to start having these ideas of, well, can I do some cosplay meetups with certain cosplay groups at the museum in some of the back end stuff that you wouldn't, as general public, you wouldn't see it. And I was like,
I think
yeah,
that's what makes it cool. Is that
this is a
you
great
wouldn't see it, and you
Yeah.
got these locations that it looks so interesting.
Yeah. And the cosplay folks that he's meeting up with and having these meetups, they're amazing. They're super talented, but also they're very down to earth people, and they want to be there, and they have the love and the passion for cosplay end of things. But they also, like, I've met several of them and become friends with several of them, and they also have such a wonderful respect and love for the museum itself as the museum. So, that all pushes, the bottom line, which is getting people to these conventions, all the conventions. So it's, fundraising for the museum, and they're all about it, which is amazing. Yeah, I saw that one recently. That one's amazing.
I went straight to your site to get it because I remember seeing it the other day ago.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And folks, this is exactly right in the museum. They're taking the pictures. Dude, cosplay has become a major thing for you guys as well.
Yeah, it has. And like I said, with the support of these groups that Rod has been in touch with over the course of the last couple of years, it's become massive for us because they are so supportive of Cradle Con just by coming out and doing that on their time, because they know the bottom line is that we're going to be pushing it with Cradle Con, but it's, they're helping us out by pushing their people who are, fans of theirs. They're pushing their people to come out to the Cradle and come see the Cradle or come to one of our conventions.
Yeah, and it's another one of those things we love here a bit in Apple TV. We rise together. It's easier to rise to the top if we're helping each other rise.
Yeah.
And you guys do that really well.
Appreciate that. I mean, it's just like cosplay, I always understood it because I've always been to horror costuming and mask making myself. But the cosplay that I see being done now is, I mean, movie quality,
Yeah.
camera ready quality, and is mind blowing. And there's a talent, and there's the cosplay is a very artistic expression. I definitely know that, but on a finer level, for me, I look at the process that these folks take in creating these things.
Right.
The time spent, or the brush strokes, or whatever it is on the prosthetic that they have on their face, whatever. Like that's, to me, is just as much as drawing panels for a comic book.
Yeah.
That's as artistic as that.
Agreed.
So that's what's mind blowing for me with it.
Dude, these guys are amazing. I always feel like Hollywood can learn from these guys. Sometimes the costumes that Hollywood makes, I'm like, dude, you should have gotten one of those cosplayers. They did a better job than you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, Marvel, hire the cosplayers.
Yeah.
Forget about those guys who are telling you stuff that you shouldn't be listening to.
And just the time it takes. And when they're, we've got a couple of guys doing some Fallout stuff for us.
Yeah.
This year, Cradle Con coming up. And we've got this amazing guy we've known for a couple of years now, Angel. And
yeah, Angel's fantastic.
The time and effort he's putting into carving foam, like carving foam and sculpting foam. Painstakingly and with such detail that when that thing goes out, you're going to think that that is from a movie set. You know, you're going to think that that was somebody used that in a movie set and we bought it off of a movie prop lot, you know?
I gotta say, Rob, you're an indie film creator, you know, and you know you've gotten to meet a lot of these people that that are doing all the makeup and all this beautiful stuff out there, and how is it for you seeing this happen?
Seeing what happened, what do you mean?
You know, the makeup, all because you know it's become to a point now that the indies are sometimes better than Hollywood when it comes to makeup.
Yeah, because I think when something is done out of love and passion, you get a greater creative effort than some things that are put out there just to make money. You know, and that's why you see sometimes the cosplayers surpassing, you know, the original creation even.
Yeah. Dude, and I gotta say, I love the indie movie scene, and sometimes you're in one of these sets, and what's created to make things happen is just amazing. But you know what they say though is like we don't have as much as the studios have, so sometimes we gotta get creative.
Limitations sometimes are very freeing, you know, of the creative fire. So it can
There's
be a
also
wonderful
something
thing.
to be said about the use of practical effects in independent films
Yeah.
versus CGI stuff in, you know, mainstream films.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, Rob said it really well there, that there's a love to what these people are doing in terms of practical effects as well. And that's where the artistry really comes out, because you have to have a real love for this in order to get into or try to be into or make a living on doing practical effects makeup, because that's something that's been very lost the last 10, 15, 20 years in filmmaking.
I agree. I've gotten tired of all the CGI, and then sometimes they're kind of phoning it home with the CGI, so it's not even like it's the best quality. So I'm like, you might as well just go back to the practical effects.
Yep.
Even though the practical effects is probably harder to do and bigger budget.
I mean, I'm sure it can be more time consuming. I'm sure it's definitely there's an expense there as far as like prosthetics go and mask making go and costuming goes. But I just think, you know, I don't know. You look at the cantina scene from Star Wars, and you compare it to something that's made
Yeah.
the last couple of years. I mean, that's all practical makeup effects.
Yeah.
That is a dying, if not, it's not a fully dead art, but it's definitely a very on the verge of dying art of prosthetic work and attaching something to somebody's face to make them look like a monster or a completely different person or whatever. That's again, a lot of cosplay comes out of that, you know,
Exactly.
out of
Mhm.
that practical effects work from the, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
I gotta say, like, I love the cantina scene, and I don't think CGI could have done better.
No.
I feel because of what it is, you need that practical effect so you can feel like you're in there. I feel like if it was CGI, it kind of would have taken people out of it.
Yeah.
Especially all that stuff happening at the same time.
And look at all the costume it goes into, you know, Jabba's palace in Jedi. You know, that walk in and that camera pan, right? Of
Yes.
all of the cast of characters in that, you know, around the Rancor pit. You know, like that's all costume design. That is all somebody had to sculpt those masks and then cast them and then fit them to the actors, and that's a lot. It's a tremendous amount of work.
It is, completely is. So now, Mr. Longo, we're walking right into your area, and we've been talking indies and all this and stuff. You know what? First, tell the people who you are. Give them the spiel. Go for it.
Sure. The spiel, Rob Longo, owner of 2121 Productions and Abracadabra Media. 2121 Productions is my video production part. We do indie films and such, horror movies, action movies, documentaries, and even client video services. On the other hand, we just started Abracadabra Media, which is our own web-based streaming service for independent filmmakers like myself who want to make a little more money with their fantasy, horror, and sci-fi films.
So let's say that somebody's interested in joining your streaming service. So how does this work?
So they go to abracadabra.media.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fact there. There's a email address. They send an email saying they're interested. They have, we have such and such a film. They'll get kind of a survey to fill out, like almost like an application, and then they'll be able to submit the film for review. If it's something that we're interested in, then they get, the contract, the terms of service, and all that fun stuff.
So
All
what are you
legal mumbo
offering?
jumbo.
What are you offering them that they're not going to get in the bigger places? Besides the fact that you're actually giving them a chance to be seen.
That's an excellent question. So the reason I did Abracadabra is, I started making movies 2006,
Oof.
and the climate has changed so much that you can make money in independent filmmaking still, but it's different now. It used to be that you could make a ton of money with one or two properties on streaming services, especially when Amazon Prime was first launched and such. But now it's changed. There's so much competition and everything. The streaming services, in a way, have devalued the value of individual movies themselves because people want to pay a subscription fee and be able to watch as many movies as they can. Content is king. The consumer consumes a lot. So I create Abracadabra to put more money in independent filmmakers' pockets. And the way we do that is not only are we going to do a system where you get paid per view eventually, but also, and this is the big one, if you bring somebody to the streaming service, a subscriber, you already have a coupon code to give them. You will get half of their subscription fee every month, paid out every quarter, even if they don't watch any of your stuff.
Yeah, because you brought the person in.
You brought the person in.
That's a good incentive.
Yeah, and that's a guarantee. As long as they're still paying every month, you'll still get that half of that subscriber fee.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else does that. No. Netflix, Amazon, nobody shares that.
No, those guys are trying to figure out how much money they can make off of you and how little money they can give you.
Pretty much.
I gotta say, you said something there. Amazon used to be a great place for indies to actually get their stuff up. I saw a lot of stuff on Amazon that I was sitting there going, how the hell did this get on here?
Yeah, I heard recently that they closed the doors to being able to put your movie up on Amazon Prime yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now you need a distributor, or you need to have won a festival, or you need just a regular studio deal, a theatrical release. But that opens up the doors for us even more.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, once we get to the point where we have enough content and subscribers, we're also going to share half the ad revenue every quarter with those filmmakers that have brought on probably like 50 or more subscribers. So there'll be 3 ways to make money on Abracadabra, 2 more ways than any other streaming service.
That's a good reason to just come just for the little bit there. That's not even talking about the fact that is another place to get your stuff seen, especially because a lot of these guys, a lot of the indies don't have places to go to get their stuff seen. Sometimes all they can do is put it up on YouTube.
No, it's attractive as a filmmaker to be able to say to friends, family, and everybody, hey, you can actually watch my movie. It's on a legitimate streaming service. That's a beautiful thing for every filmmaker's fragile but large ego.
So tell the people a little bit about all the stuff you've been working on, because you've started with superhero stuff and now you've kind of gone into horror.
Yes. So 2 horror films done. Working on the 3rd one. It's in pre-production. We're shooting it this year. Hopefully it'll be finished by this October.
That's always your goal, right? Is to get it done by that October?
Yeah, every year to do one. Ghost of the Grove, The Husband, will be re-released, it looks like, in May.
Right.
Ghost of the Grove 2, The Unblech, hopefully the same. And it'll be available on all platforms. And hopefully also on Abracadabra Media.
There you go. I was going to say, you're going to put your own stuff on your own stuff, right?
Yeah. I have to be careful because we do have a distribution deal. So I have
to try to figure
navigate
that
correctly. So I'm gonna have to put out more movies.
Now you're giving me another question. Well, somebody has a deal like you do. How do you work around that so you can actually get it up? Is there?
It all depends if your deal is exclusive or not,
right?
And what platforms is it on? If it's on a platform that the audience pays for it per rental,
Right.
then probably you can't be on a streaming service of a subscriber streaming service like Abracadabra. You know what I mean? So it really depends. That's why I tell, and part of the application process too is, everybody needs to review their own distribution deals and make sure they're within the legalities of it. Because we don't want to have to pull anybody's film because so we got to take down notice because hey, you have a distribution deal with so and so on Amazon. So
you got people out there and they're watching this right now. And you say, what is it that you want on Abracadabra? Because I know there's certain things that you want.
Sure, we're looking for fantasy, horror, sci-fi, and any feature films related to those three genres or shorts. Maybe we'll accept 2 documentaries that hit on fantasy, sci-fi and horror also. I'm thinking of opening it up, and I think I talked to you about it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of especially we're in the Northeast, a lot of independent filmmakers also do gang kind of movies and kung fu kind of stuff, and I might take that on too. We'll see.
Because it all falls into the same genre. That's the same genre we all grew up on. The kaiju and the kung fu and the sci-fi and the horror. those were our Saturdays.
Yeah, it's like our Saturday afternoons for sure.
Exactly. You go watch the kung fu movie, and then you go outside and beat each other up. Get in trouble.
I will beat you, Ralph. My technique is greater than yours.
You
have to get the bad dubbing too to make it authentic,
dude. And it's just like so much easier now because I know we've been doing this for a while, and before trying to do what we're doing now would have taken more money, would have taken so much more. Being an indie anything right now is so much easier. Not that it's easy, it's just easier to do it now.
There are a lot less barriers to entry, and certain things that used to be a struggle are no longer. When Netflix first started, they had to code their whole website and front end and everything.
Yeah.
Now, you just go to Squarespace and boom, in 5 minutes your website is up and published.
Yeah.
So the technology has made certain things much better.
And you have all these places now that actually make it easier for you because they do all the work for you, and you just plug things in and boom, you're on.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you want, because as an indie creator, you want as many ways to get your things done as possible, because you already have an uphill battle as an indie creator.
True, very true. From cardboard robots to full prosthetics in horror movies, and a whole lot of buckets of blood.
Buckets and buckets of blood.
If there are any indie filmmakers out there listening to this interview, if you've got any kind of fantasy, horror, sci-fi, you want that legitimacy of being on an actual streaming service and want some money in your pocket, send us an email. We'll send you an application, get you onboarded as soon as we can.
So I know you're doing all this stuff, and you're doing the horror verse, which I love. The idea of because I know a lot of people have tried to make their own horror verse. You are already succeeding because you're on the 3rd movie. You've moved on. You've done 2 of them, and all of this happens in the same universe, right? Tell the people a little bit about that.
It's all in the Grove verse. I grew up in Cedar Grove, New Jersey. The Grove is the fictional town where all our horror movies take place in and around. And essentially, the Grove is on a nexus or ley line that attracts a lot of supernatural to it. But not only does it attract it, like a Roach Motel, once they come in, they can't get out. So good and bad supernatural entities get trapped within the Grove and then fight for control of it.
Love it. I've helped with a couple. I'm in a couple. So folks, you should check this stuff out. I gotta say, Rob, you're amazing to work with. And if you guys get a chance, you should work with Rob Longo. If you see his stuff out there, hit him up, man. He has a great set, and it's always great people. It's like family.
Truly, truly.
In our video game direction, because I have to ask this, Seamus, how did you get the idea? Because how does somebody go? We have a museum for aviation. You know what we should do? Video games. How does that come to happen?
How the arcade age come to arcade age come to happen?
Mm-hmm.
We're sitting down one day, and I said, no one's really done that.
Right.
And there is a Long Island Cold War connection to video gaming that a lot of people don't know with history, and that is Brookhaven National Labs with a scientist named William Higginbotham, who was working on the atomic bomb, and he created the first video game. It wasn't a video game, though, because he put it on an oscilloscope. So he technically created Pong before Pong was created on the Megabox Odyssey.
Right.
So I kind of took that and ran with it and drew up the plans, and everyone said I was out of my mind. And then it took about a year to collect everything and get all the cabinets together and learn how to work on them. And
yeah, some of those are amazing cabinets. I haven't seen them. I haven't seen some of those in years.
Yeah, I learned to basically restore them, on our own, me and a couple of the guys who work with me. And we basically do all the work on our own on them. And most of the people who I approached thought I was kind of out of my mind, but they all thought I was crazy. But I've got a couple of other directors I work with closely the last 20 years, and a couple of them really believed in the idea, and they kind of pushed it forward with basically the executives at the top of the museum.
Right.
And the executives liked the idea, so they kind of let me have at it. And 10 years ago, we launched it, and it comes and goes. It also travels. It travels. It's traveled to, Philadelphia. It's traveled out to Chicago a couple times. But it's all just out of an idea that I was literally sitting in my office one day, and I was like, you know what? Nobody talks about this particular time subculture in my life when I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
That for me, I looked at the arcade as a gathering place.
It was.
As the first social media type of interaction that I was a part of as a kid, because that's where you went. If I was a kid, 8 or 9 years old, I went to the arcade, but you had, people up to the ages of in their 20s there, and that was like a social network.
Yeah, it was all ages, and you met a lot of different people, and I gotta say, you get that feeling as you walk through all these machines. It's the lighting, all the machines are on. It feels like you're back in one of those arcades.
Yeah, and that was my intention of designing it that way. I wanted people, when they walked out of the exhibit history part of it and they walked into the arcade end of it, that they're walking into an actual arcade. So yeah, set the lighting a certain way, have the games laid out a certain way. So yeah, all of that. It was my intention to want to transport the customer or the gamer back in time.
You do a great job, because that's what it feels like. The only thing I kind of miss, but don't miss, because you actually don't have to put the quarters in.
Yeah.
You can actually walk through and play whatever you want to play.
Play whatever you want.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And you have that. You got that thing as being a kid. You're like, oh, I don't need a quarter. I can just play.
Yep. People still put quarters in them too, and then they're like, "Hey, can I get my quarter back?" I'm like, I don't have the keys for that, So you were told it's on free play, So
I have to ask, what are your top 3 arcade cabinets of all time?
Like personally, what I love?
Personally, yeah.
It's gonna be probably Double Dragon, is always going to be
That's a
number
classic.
one in my
Yeah.
heart. NBA Jam, and then
You're on fire.
I would say NBA Jam, and then probably Street Fighter 2.
Those are three great machines.
Yeah.
How about you, Rob?
Oh, Street Fighter 2 for sure. Ate up
Awesome.
many quarters. Spy Hunter. I would love to own a Spy
Love
Hunter.
Spy Hunter. Oh,
And then it's either probably Rolling Thunder. That's definitely
oh, you're going out there, man.
Yeah.
No, he's not, because Rob, you're on my wavelength. So one of the first games I ever played as a child in an arcade was the Spy Hunter. So I had to seek one out, and I found one in Pennsylvania, had it shipped up, redid it, and that's out. And the other one of an oddball favorite of mine is Rolling Thunder. So I'm with you, Rob. Rolling Thunder is a phenomenal game.
It is.
Phenomenal game.
It really is.
It's so good.
I think I go back to like really old school because I can't get enough of Pac-Man or Miss Pac-Man.
Okay.
I can't get enough Defender.
Defender's pretty awesome.
Oh my god! And
Just
I think
the sound design of Defender,
dude,
transports you.
Yeah.
And I think my last one is Galaga.
Okay.
Because I was sitting there with shooting games, and I'm like, some of them were just amazing.
But I appreciate Defender for what it is, but I am awful at it because I think that game is brutal hard. I think that game is so difficult.
Yeah. I lost a lot of quarters to that game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another game I lost a lot of quarters to was Golden Axe, like you guys were saying. Dude, I put so many quarters in there trying to get to the end of.
Yeah.
That's a great game.
Yeah. I put a lot of money
because you can play with a bunch of your buddies.
The three games I mentioned, I definitely put a lot of quarters in. A lot of quarters in. And it's funny because we were discussing, we have for the exhibit, we have our own little podcast where we do episodes and we pick a game. So we talk about the money that certain games made. And it's funny that you said about quarters, whatever, quarter play. So NBA Jam, Bally Midway paid the NBA like $200 in royalties per cabinet that they sold.
Wow.
And that was it. That was it.
That's a great deal.
They would sell the cabinets to the arcade owners for $3,000.
Right.
Right. They moved 50, 60, 70,000 of those cabinets.
Yo, those cabinets were everywhere.
All they had to pay was the NBA was $200 and like no royalties after that. Just $200 per machine.
Great deal.
Yeah.
You know the NBA was like, they're not gonna make any money off of this.
And because when Midway pitched the idea to the NBA, they didn't even really want it. And so they pitched them something else, more of like a basketball simulator. So Midway so the NBA was like, okay, fine, you can use the likeness of the players. Here you go. But it's not going to be a thing. And it became the juggernaut that it became.
Dude, it was great in the cabinets. It was great in the consoles. It was. I'm not even a big sports player, and that was just an amazing game.
Yep.
Oh man! Speaking of games and tabletop, Rob, your world, you actually built it so that you can actually use the characters in D&D itself, right?
Yeah, one of the perks we were giving out for Ghost of the Grove 2, the Umblet, was monster sheets for the different monsters, both in the previous movies and upcoming movies. So
that's just fantastic.
And,
I love when
now I'm trying to make a saving throw about doing I have two RPG systems that I want to put out there eventually. But one of them, the rule book is written in Norse ruins. Because I want that
Norse ruin.
I want everyone to have that feeling of like opening like a tomb, a real tome of like magic, and like having to translate it and have it like high quality and beautiful, like high level spell book kind of look to it.
Yeah.
Because like if you read like original like The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Dwarven is actually Nordic ruins that he wrote, but you can translate all of those Nordic ruins and it actually is Old English.
Wow.
So.
Dude,
But everybody I tell this idea to says I'm crazy. But
yeah, but that's the whole point, man.
I hear that all the time.
But you're a DM, so this is the kind of stuff you do anyway, right?
Yes.
You know, because you want to bring the people in. You want to give them that epic feel.
Absolutely.
And you actually were doing some DMing. Are you still doing it? You know, 'cause
Right
I know you
now,
did a couple of them.
Really, I mean, I would love to do the ruins RPG and do the DMing like we were doing with Anthony Gambino, Marvel Illustrator, and everything, where you would play.
Oh, that was
I
a
would
great
DM
idea.
for
Yeah.
you, and you get a character sketch from Anthony. But I really just have to buckle down and focus on Abracadabra. Otherwise, certain powers that be will certainly come down hard on me. So
Isn't that the problem with the creative being?
focus, Rob.
Exactly. You know, we try to focus, but we're creatives, so we're constantly doing something. I know I fall into that. I know that there's too many projects right now that I'm working at the same time.
Yeah, but you kind of have to go sometimes where the muse calls you.
Yeah,
because you don't know if she's going to be back or not.
exactly.
So you kind of always have to answer her when she comes by.
Yep.
That's what I say. I completely say that. You know, and it's funny because while you have that thing happening at that moment, you know, and you ignore it, because I've done it before where you ignore it, and that fire that happened at that moment doesn't happen the same way again.
Look at that. Like, if I ignore the muse for too long, I'll get literally a migraine from not creating. So even though I had to focus on business, got to launch Abracadabra, all the things associated with it, I still had to put a little time and a little pen to paper for this RPG just to get it out of my system so I could move on from it. Because otherwise, that creative fire burns you, and then
Exactly.
end up with a terrible migraine from it.
Oh my god. And I can tell you, both of you guys are like total creatives. You know, Seamus, I think that the museum actually allows you to, and it's funny because it is the Museum of Aviation. So I know some people out there going, how do you make that jump? You know, how do you become this creative and have fun with it, and it be something so normal, even though we know it's still part of the geekdom, especially aviation.
Yeah, and like I said, I've got a great team behind me and with me, but also just at least the executives above me, the people I report to, they might think I'm crazy, but they also have seen, I guess, the success in the creativity, or at least that they have seen, at least they definitely have seen over the last 10 years, at least when I started with the arcade exhibit and then got into doing, Comic-Con stuff, whatever. They know that geekdom is not a subculture anymore.
No.
It is mainstream culture. It is every piece of mainstream culture. And they know that the people who grew up with that is also the museum customer base. So why not blend the two? And there's not a lot of money in selling a ticket to your old school type museum. So a lot of museums are taking this what we're calling, edutainment stance, right? Where you're educating but you're entertaining at the same time. So
Right.
a lot of what we do around video gaming and comic books is we relate the history back as well, or we do a lot of education programming, at least STEM education programming around video gaming as well. So
Right.
it loans itself to that, but greater, for me being a historian, we're telling the history of these subcultures, which all relate back to, comic book culture, all of that relates, all modern comic book culture relates back to World War II and the Cold War. All of it does. Literally all of it does. The amount of comic book characters that came out of the Cold War is staggering.
Yep.
Staggering. And then you have the Cold War technology and the space race happening. The technology for video gaming, the microchip, came out of us landing on the moon.
Yeah.
So without NASA and without Grumman on Long Island, without everybody pushing the space race, we wouldn't have the computer technology, the PCs, IBM. None of that would have what we have right now. So it all does stem back to that, you know, educating people on the history of these things, but also entertaining them at the same time.
And that's the way we got to be, folks. And
Yeah.
Rob, let me ask you this: you're trying to focus, you're trying to do all this stuff. How do you focus and sell Abracadabra to the person? What are your plans? Where are you going to go? Are you hitting conventions, or are you hitting podcasts? What are you doing?
I'm doing a lot of interviews like this. Yep. I'm scheduled for quite a few of them. We took out through your friends at It Came From the Radio, 3 months of radio spots for it that go out in May. And then just yesterday we hired Macabre Marketing, the company that specializes in horror, affiliated marketing, to help us out, because I can't do it by myself. You know, it's impossible. And the marketing is where it's gonna happen, both on getting the content creators on board and then switching it over to the subscribers to gain subscribers. When we go to gain subscribers, we're definitely going to be hitting the conventions, going to every indie filmmaker table, handing them a little packet to join us, and then probably doing some sort of trial subscription to everybody at the con. I think we just did a thing. We bought like 10,000 flyers, and we're going to schedule out a bunch of local conventions to do it, because it's the only way to grow it. So
it's the hustle.
It's the hustle. It's the multimedia marketing blitz.
Yep.
From awesome things. But I have to say, the greatest moment of validation is being on a show like this, and any filmmaker seeing it, going to the website, reading the fact, and then contacting me right away. And that's already started to happen, and I love that. So
yeah, because we got to do the
I'll
talk.
be on the show next week also.
We got to do the talk. Dude, you got an open invitation, so don't give me. Yeah, you've been our guest host a couple times, and you're more than welcome to come guest host.
Thank you.
Which means you actually get the word out a little bit more.
True. I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, folks, you got to hustle. You got to do the hustle. You got to put the time in. Even Seamus, people go, "What? It's a museum," but what you're talking about is a hustle. You're trying to get people, and you constantly have to get new ideas and get, especially nowadays.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. You guys were kind of touching on it, like Rob saying, like, if you don't engage the muse or you try to ignore it, then you get headaches, or I will get run down. Or if I ignore it for too long, it go back to saying what you were saying, Ralph. The fire about that idea is not as intense.
Yeah.
If I push it off for a year or 2 years, which I've done, then my passion and my love for it and the fire behind that idea is a lot dimmer when I do go back and revisit, and I have to find that passion again. And that's all part of the hustle too, I think I'm a creative person. I think that my bosses, my higher ups, believe I'm a creative person, so they kind of allow me to do it. But also, it's kind of like I cannot be forced to be creative. You can't just like say, "Hey, create." Like, can you do this? Can you create another event? Can you do this other thing? It's got to come to me, and then I can't ignore it because it'll keep me up at night, like what Rob was saying. Like it'll literally keep me up at night. So I will get up and in the middle of work, I'll take a walk, and then I'll grab a piece of pen and paper, and I'll sketch the idea out in a couple of paragraphs, write it out, and then that thing might sit in a folder for a year or two, but at least I jotted it down.
You got to capture it.
You have to capture it, and that's all part of the hustle, because then what you're then doing is you're hustling to make that piece of paper an actual tangible thing that you're touching and you're interacting with.
It's like Rob was saying. Sometimes you have to focus on one thing. That doesn't mean that you leave it on the floor.
Right.
It just means that you have to quickly or find time to get it down and keep going in the direction you need to go. But you have to strike while the fire's hot.
Yes.
Because if you don't, then the idea will be different.
Yep.
And as a creator, what ends up happening, just to explain a little bit, folks, what ends up happening with an idea, something that's burning in your head, is that as time progresses, that idea joins other ideas, so it becomes a different idea. So it's never the same idea again. After a while, it turns into something totally different, and who knows if that original idea would have been the better idea out of everything. Because sometimes what you do is you steal bits and pieces from other places to do what you want to do.
Yeah, there's nothing more annoying than having an idea, let's say an idea for like 3 different game mechanics or 3 different characters in a movie, and then you don't write it down right away and capture it, and then you forget one of it. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
It haunts you for weeks trying to recreate that fire in that moment to get back that idea.
A lot of people, like my guys, joke around with me a lot and make fun of me a lot because I'll have my laptop, and if I'm doing notes for like our podcast for the arcade exhibit, I'll have like 15 windows open, on my web browser.
Yeah.
They're like, what's that all about? I'm like, ease up, because that's all my research. Those are all my ideas. Like, so I need to have them all open right now until I finish writing what I'm writing. And they're like, are you serious? Like, just go look it up again. I'm like, no. Because I came across this by fluke.
Yeah,
Exactly.
in an organic way.
In a very organic way. So if that needs to stay up there organically so that I can, so I can pull from it,
Right now I have 365 tabs open.
Woo!
Yeah. I have about
I can't
85,
close
I have
any of them.
85 tabs open on my phone.
My phone's always running funny and slow because I got so much stuff open.
Yep.
And people go, come on, Ralph, your phone will run faster, your computer will run faster if you just get rid of a couple of those tabs.
No, that's the creativity, man.
Yeah, folks, it's the curse of being creative. I feel like what happens is most people convince you to like push something aside, get rid of something, do something else, before you're actually ready to like put down on paper or get the idea flowing the way it's supposed to be flowing. And that's one of the things that happens. The other thing that happens is sometimes we get all these ideas and we'll sit there and go, eventually or one day or someday we will do whatever it is. And let me ask you both, what do you tell people out there when it comes to that kind of stuff? You can both talk.
I just saw, Robert Rodriguez, the film director, is like one of my heroes. When I first wanted to start making movies, I bought his book, Rebel Without a Crew. The first page, it says, if you want to be a film director, get a business card that says you're a film director. You're halfway there. But recently he gave an interview and he was like, the word I hate the most is aspiring filmmaker. Never be aspiring, because that means you aren't one. And you probably won't be, because you'll always be aspiring. He's like, we're always learning and everything. You're a filmmaker the day you commit to being a filmmaker. There's no such thing as aspiring filmmaker, aspiring game designer. No, just start doing it. And I love that. I posted it everywhere the other day.
I love that too, because it kind of goes back on kind of what I say to myself in the back of my head, and I tell lots of my friends if they're going out and doing things or they're facing a challenge in life or they're facing a challenge at work or whatever, and I'll say it to my crew when we're getting ready for whatever it might be. I don't just run conventions at the museum. My full-time job is special events of all sorts. So we've got to turn it on. So it's either I say, you just got to turn it on, or when I'm facing a challenge or when I'm facing something that I'm like, is this good enough? is this going to be something? Am I going to make something out of this? Or is it going to fail? I just remind myself, and it kind of goes to what you were saying, Rob, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it. Because you keep telling yourself that you're gonna get there.
Yeah.
It's like getting over a struggle or pain in life, loss of a loved one, whatever. You have to just keep saying, this sucks right now. I'm going to be okay.
Yep.
Eventually I will be okay. If I keep saying to myself, fake it till you make it, or if I tell my friends, hey, you're going through some real crummy times at work right now, or whatever it might be, fake it till you make it. Act happy.
Yeah. No,
Fake all that.
fake it
act
till you
happy.
make it.
Be positive,
I call it act as if.
Yeah,
Act
act
as
as if.
Act as
Act
if.
as if.
Act as if you're already successful. What would
Yep.
the super successful filmmaker, director version of me do right now today? Then
Right.
I need to act like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I also feel like I completely agree with you guys. I also feel like people will stop themselves, and the best way to know if you're doing something right is to make mistakes. So you have to get that first draft done. You have to get that first film done. You got to get that first podcast done. You got to get it down in order for you to go, oh, okay, now I can see what the mistakes are. Because if you stay in your head about the whole thing, you'll just stay in your head about the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
Which means that you will never create what needs to be created, because there'll never be the perfect moment.
Right.
No, no such thing. And I would even say stay away from saying fake it till you make it, because that introduces that self doubt of am I faking it, imposter syndrome. Just act as if.
As if.
Words are very powerful. We call it spelling because they're spells. Even abracadabra means because I speak I create, or something like that. So act as if. What would the most successful version of yourself do right now? Do that.
It's very important, folks.
No matter how much I want to go play Rainbow Six Siege.
Right.
Dude, yeah, all I've been thinking about as we've been talking video games is there's a couple of video games that I can play right now.
Yeah.
Are you playing Marvel Rivals? What are you playing?
Oh my God, I'm not playing anything because I don't have no time. But everybody wants me to jump in on Marvel Rivals, and I'm like, because I already know what's gonna happen if I jump into one of these video games. And people are gonna be like, Rob, weren't you supposed to do the show today?
But
Yeah,
you know
it's all
what? But
consuming.
play is very important to the
It is.
internet station and keeping it healthy. Reading and playing are super important still.
Yeah.
So I still will make time for the occasional video game and the occasional good book.
I gotta say, I feel bad, but most of my video games have turned into whatever I can play on here.
Yeah, but that's handy. That's fine.
Or the
It is
Switch.
handy.
Because the Switch is easy. I just pick it up and go.
Ooh, but did you see the Switch 2 announcement?
Oh, it looks fantastic.
Super expensive though.
Yeah, it is.
What was it? They said 450.
Yeah, 450.
Oof. And they said what? June 6th, right?
Yeah, it's
That
early.
soon?
I think it's early summer. Yeah, I thought it was early summer.
Yeah, because I know they gave the date a couple days ago, and everybody went crazy, and they're like, oh, and people, I got friends already saving money.
Hey, Seamus, I have a question for you. Is there a lot of controversy about video games being art that should be archived and preserved? Do you run into any of that? I've heard certain foundations are having trouble, from video game publishers that aren't allowing them certain things.
I've run into that. I've heard about that. So there was an exhibit, actually, at the Smithsonian Institute years ago, art of video gaming, and it focused on exactly what you were kind of talking about. How do we preserve this digital media stuff? How do we preserve now in digital age? How do we preserve all the digital media and all the art and stuff like that? I feel like that's half of what I'm trying to be doing as well, is trying to preserve the art itself, media as art. I think there's a movement to try to do it, but I think there's a lot of publishing companies that are not, that are exactly what you're saying. I have heard that there's a lot of companies that are just not allowing preservationists to archive this the way it should be in a digital vault.
Right.
You know? So yeah.
That makes no sense at all, man. But I've seen this conversation since video games came out, because you had that whole generation of people going, "Oh, it's just video games," but it's the same people that were talking about it's just comic books, or it's just music, or because they always downplaying all these things that actually make us alive, make us grow. I really don't understand why they do it, but I feel like they belittle it because they don't understand it, or they want it to have less power, because all these things have much power.
Yeah. And video gaming, it's not just the box art or the cabinet that is art, right? It's everything.
It's everything, even down to the circuit boards.
Yep.
It's the circuit board is art, because somebody had to engineer that. Engineering is art.
Yeah.
Engineering is math and art combined. They had a child, and that's engineering. So how do we preserve all of it? And a lot of it's already been lost. You've got, you try to find half of the games that came out on your phone in the 2000s, they're gone.
They've been gone. Yeah.
They've been gone. So that preservation of digital media, especially digital video gaming, archiving that is extremely important. But yeah, and there is a lot of controversy surrounding it, because how do we do it if these companies are defunct and all that's disappeared off the internet, and you can't even find a link to download it or play it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that a lot with the MMORPGs, because some of them have closed down. They're gone. They're completely gone. But every once in a while, you'll find somebody who's kept a server alive.
City of Heroes.
City of Heroes, yeah.
Great example. But NCSoft was very kind, because they said, okay, you can keep doing it. And also, here's the code that you were missing that you needed for this, this, and this. And now I don't know what it's called now. It's not City of Heroes anymore. But that community is still going and still playing. And there are different offshoots of it.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, unfortunately rare story in video games.
And when you look at video game as art, right? And we just talked about those lost games. Well, that's some artistic director who designed that video game, and some designer was an artist, that now his or her art, their art, is virtually lost in the digital age, that if we didn't play it in 2014, where is it? It's gone. So that art is lost. That piece of art is lost.
Completely.
We should never lose any piece of history.
No,
never.
At all. And video games aren't, their art, their writing, there's so much, and again, like I was saying before, I feel like, people like to belittle it, but at the same time, these same people are the ones going, we need to ban video games. Right. Like, if these things don't mean anything, if they don't impress minds, then why do you need to ban them?
Yep.
You can't have it both ways, folks.
Yep.
I think, it might sound like I'm a hypocrite, because now I own a streaming service of my own, but I would like to see us return more to just owning physical goods.
I agree.
DVDs, Blu-rays, video game cartridges, all of that. It's better for the art forms and media in general, better for the artists, and better for the consumer. But we are where we are right now.
But I agree with you. But you're doing streaming the right way. You're trying to find a place where people can come and see things that they won't be able to see. Yeah. I find that a lot of the streaming sites, what they're doing is they're picking and choosing what you can see. So you can't see certain things anymore. There's certain cartoons you can't see anymore. There's certain TV shows you can't see. It's like the video games. They've been lost. You'll never hear or see them again, because especially with what Warner Brothers started to do with all its catalog, and making sure that you can't see certain things.
Yep.
What is it?
Like, oh, that movie doesn't
Saying,
exist.
in the near future, you'll own nothing and be happy about it.
Yep. That's the saying.
I've had this argument a couple times, especially with video game guys, because they're like, well, what do you mean you want the cartridge? What do you mean you want the CD? I want the cartridge. I want the CD. But you just you download it. I'm like, dude, when you download it, they can take it away from you anytime they want. No, they can't.
Yeah.
They can.
Yeah.
Same thing with
why
music.
even like my most modern console, I don't have a PS5, but my PS4, everything I have for it is physical.
Yeah.
Nice.
Physical.
I still have
Everything.
my Atari 2600 and my cartridges. So.
I bought 2 years ago.
The mini?
Because 2 years ago, I went and bought a VCR because I realized I've got all these VHS things laying around since I was a kid. I don't want to throw these things out. This is physical media. This is art. I'm preserving this as my collection. So when I got a VCR,
But the pendulum is
I'm having a great time, dude.
The pendulum is swinging the other way a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've been seeing that people have been making VHS versions of current movies.
Yep.
Independent filmmakers making VHS versions of their movies because it is a different experience, and it harkens back to why vinyl still sells on Amazon, because it's an experience and a time investment and a more fuller experience. You have the liner art, the artwork, the A side, the B side.
Yeah.
You sit and listen to it. You're not interrupted by anything. No commercials or anything. Even for Abracadabra, I refuse to have commercials that interrupt your film.
Right.
Cinematography is a visual language. I don't want to interrupt you talking. Nope. Nobody likes to be interrupted.
No.
So I will put 1 or 2 pre-roll ads before every movie, but that's it. And I know that's leaving money on the table, but I want to preserve the experience of watching the movie. I don't need to see, a commercial about car wax in the middle of my horror movie.
Nope. What you were just saying about vinyl, I believe that VHS and cassette is going to be coming back like vinyl.
I agree.
Maybe
two companies just
back.
made new Walkman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
New cassette Walkman.
Listen. The last VHS tape was years ago, released on VHS. I want to say it was the movie Hidalgo, was released on VHS. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, what is the most recent movie purposely released by the company on VHS was Alien Romulus as a special edition. You could buy a VHS. You had to spend $60 on VHS, but they sold them out. Gone.
People like to own physical things.
Yeah.
They do. There's no doubt.
Dude, man, I like owning my favorite movies. I like having them. I like being able to see them whenever I want. People go, oh, you can do that on streaming. No, because they take it away. There's times where there's certain movies that aren't on Netflix. They're not on Disney Plus, and they can do whatever they want. They can take it away whenever they want, and then you have no place else to watch it.
Yeah, for Abracadabra, anybody who brings their movie to us, they have a choice when they first join us. They can either have their movie on for 2 years, or they can have it on for the lifetime of Abracadabra.
Wow.
Unless it violates, our terms of services in some way. They should never have gone through the application process anyway. But, because there's nothing worse than wanting to watch a certain movie and you've got to hunt down what service is it hiding on, if it's even on one anymore.
Yeah, there's certain movies already that I can't find, and it kind of, you start getting annoyed. You're like, and then people start to tell you, then, Prof, there's no movie like that exists. Like, I saw it.
Yeah,
I remember. I saw it when I was 12.
I was talking to somebody about the Page Master, and they're like, the Page Master? What the hell is that?
I need to buy Life Force on Blu-ray next.
I have to find a copy of The Black Cauldron on VHS.
Ooh, yeah. Definitely.
When I mentioned Black Cauldron, people are like, what's just like you use it Ralph Page Master? Mm-hmm. People are like, what's a Black Cauldron? I'm like, are you kidding me? How do you do that? It's a Disney film.
No, I might actually take my first films, the Vixen stuff, and put it on VHS.
That'd be great.
That'd be awesome.
It's like a special. Yeah, would I look cool?
Should.
I love it, folks. Get creative. And I gotta say, I love the fact that vinyl's back because there's nothing like listening to a record.
Yeah.
CDs are nice, digital's nice, but there's nothing like listening to a record.
Yeah.
It's a feeling, it's a whole emotion.
Well, with cassette and vinyl too is that it's analog, right? Especially with the cassette. So I remember years ago there was this interview with Dave Mustaine from Megadeth, and how they were still recording analog and not going digital, because what he was explaining was he's like, there's little cracks in digital on the line. He's like, and the music falls into that crack. He's like, you're not hearing it the way I'm playing it in the studio.
Yeah.
He's like, so why would I record it any other way than the way I'm playing it in the studio is the way I want our fans to hear it. That always stuck with me. So that's why I started collecting vinyl and started collecting cassettes again, because I'm hearing, analog is definitely the purest form of what the artist intended you to hear.
Sure. It has a better warmth to it. It actually captures more information. When you compress anything digitally, the algorithm, the math of it, you're going to lose some stuff.
Yep.
You're a little bit. And then, if you're into music, you go down this slippery slope, though, of like buying more and more expensive speakers or headphones.
Oh, definitely.
Because there's like a moment, like even in I'm a big like dubstep techno fan. There's a moment when I finally bought a good pair of cans, put them on, and it was like hearing my favorite song for the first time. The intricacies and the layers of it that I had never heard before.
Yeah.
It's like a new song to me.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, one of the biggest experiences I had was I went to see Celine Dion when she was playing down here, I think in Long Island, and it was one of the first times that I ever realized that sometimes the performer sings better than the digital or the whatever you're hearing. It was the first time that I was like, whoa, this is better in person than it was whatever I heard recorded.
Yeah.
And so that moment I didn't realize that because I always knew there was worse. There was people out there, they sounded worse when you saw them in person. You're like, whatever. But I never knew that you could be better than what you have recorded. And I was like, whoa, okay. And that was that moment. And I was like, dude.
Even with the technology for filmmaking right now, I can get a camera, put a lens on it. It's so clinically sharp that it has no character and it's incredibly boring. So you find filmmakers, even down to the indie level, we're going more towards vintage lenses, rehousing them into cinema lenses because they have a certain film-like quality to them where they're not so overly sharp and overly clinical and boring. Because, visual medium, cinematography is a visual language. I want to have a unique accent to it. I want you to be able to see a still of one of my movies and be like, that's a Rob Longo movie. Yeah. And the only way to get that is by introducing that character through the lenses, through the color grading and stuff. Not like this, overly sharp iPhone look.
Sometimes you need the overly sharp iPhone look, but sometimes you need, if you're doing noir, you need it to look a certain way.
Yeah, it depends what it is.
And exactly that's why I completely agree with you, Rob, because sometimes you want it to look a certain way, and sometimes you got to now you got to do tricks to make it look that way, or maybe
you have to do tricks to make it look old and character, to take away some of the sharpness and it's crazy world. You introduce film grain in your digital video on purpose to make it look more like film.
Right.
Snap, crackle, pop.
Yeah.
All right, folks. I hope you've been enjoying this geek out.
We have.
One more time, Rob, tell the people where they can find you and all the good stuff. I'll put it up over here.
Yep, 2121productions.com for all my narrative work. Abracadabra.media for the streaming service. Looking to launch it, soft launch April 9th, just to showcase how it's going to look and everything and function. And then in May, we'll start taking subscribers on, and we'll be running out of the gates from there with it.
Yeah, you have it, folks. Go check out Rob Longo. He does amazing work. You got to check out his films. Where can they find your films right now?
Nowhere.
Really?
Nowhere yet. Now we have a new distribution deal.
Oh, that's right. You
Looks like-
switched. Okay.
It looks like in May you'll be able to see all of them, and supposedly it'll be on Amazon Prime, Google Play, and Apple iTunes. So
Yeah, folks, look forward to it. It's just fun. Go check it out. Or maybe Rob will do another showing again because he's done a couple of showings.
could happen.
There you go. Seamus, tell the people where they can find you. All the good stuff. Go for it.
You can find all the good stuff at cradlecon.com. You can find us, I think, on Instagram at ConCradle. You can find the Arcade Exhibit on Instagram at the Arcade Exhibit.
Ooh,
We
I didn't
also
know
have
that.
a podcast anywhere you get your podcast. If you can look us up, give us a listen. It's the Arcade Exhibit podcast.
That's a lot of stuff for you guys go check out, especially you video game guys out there, because I know somebody's out there going right now going, "Hey, Ralph."
Seamus, are we going to do an event together?
Ooh.
I'm thinking Halloween event, virtual reality, AR, augmented reality, horror themed.
Yeah.
From beginning to end.
Or I'm thinking just Indie Horror Film Festival.
Okay,
Ooh.
all right, you got me.
That's good too, because I love that stuff. That's
All
right in my wheelhouse.
All right.
See, folks, we bring people together.
Yeah.
He had
course.
me at Rolling Thunder. I was like, all right.
Yeah.
This guy knows what
Well,
he's
when you
talking
said Rolling Thunder, I was like, I love this guy.
about. All right, cool.
Of course, this
Player
weekend.
1, player 2.
Yep.
Oh, see, yeah, we got it, folks. This weekend we will be at Tabletop Gaming Expo, Long Island Tabletop Gaming Expo. James, you'll be there too, right?
Of course, man. I'll be there. I'm gonna see you as soon as you walk in, bud.
There you go. You also have some Shadow Rabbits and a bunch of other Bit and Apple guys, some Hit Point games, some Team Drew. So there's going to be a lot of people there.
There's a lot of Bit and Apple people. Yeah, a lot of Bit and Apple people there. Yeah. Come down and see us, man. Everybody
this con is going to be fantastic. It's in the cradle of aviation. So that's a second player right there, folks.
Yep.
You got to see this. And then all the video games will be there as well.
I not for Tabletop.
Oh.
For Cradle Con and for Retro Video Game Expo.
Interesting. Okay. I could swear I saw them in Tabletop before.
Maybe years ago, but the last few years they've been focusing exclusively on Tabletop.
All right, folks. See, now you're gonna have to go to Cradle.
Exactly.
The same guy right there.
Cradle
Go to
Con
all of them.
5 or 6 weeks.
Oh, dude, yeah, go to all of them. This is an amazing thing.
Go to all of them.
And keep your eyes open because they do films and stuff at the Cradle as well. This is an all-purpose location. And if you're a cosplayer, keep your eyes open as well because they do a lot of amazing events at the Cradle.
Yes, we do.
Cool.
And this weekend, our new sponsor, ClipKick, will be at Tabletop. And what they're doing is it's an event kind of social media. So you're all going to be there. They're going to have a barcode where they invite you to take all the beautiful pictures and videos that you have and all go into this beautiful place where you can all see it. And only the people that are there and have this barcode will be able to see that stuff. And it'll be like your own personal social media. That's
Awesome.
ClipKick. And I'll be there and I'll be like, hey, look here, sign in. Let's see. I think that is everything. Any last words, guys?
Keep creating. Keep supporting independent filmmakers and everybody with video games. Put another quarter in.
Yeah.
Game is not over yet.
Exactly.
Game is never over. And thank you guys for having me on. Thank you for having me on, Ralph. Seriously.
Seamus, you are welcome anytime. I had a feeling it's going to be a great geek out, and I was right. And the fact of putting you and Rob together, I was like, this
yeah.
So
Hit me up for real.
Worked perfect.
As we do here on the show, I'll press the button, and where it stops, nobody knows.